Is that your puppy? She's very pretty.
Thank you, Papa SuChong.
Break her neck for me.
What?
Break that sweet puppy's neck.
No, please.
Break that puppy's neck. Would you kindly?
No. No.
Very good.
Yi SuChong is one of the most important and brilliant men that Jack will come to know of during the events of the game BioShock. The father of plasmids, it would be SuChong's research that would take Adam from a volatile, unrefined substance and turn it into a serum for specific genetic modification. His incredible scientific advancements marking him as one of the city's best and brightest, as behind the scenes he delved ever further into the unethical, turning unfortunate souls into unresting workers, as well as creating a so-dubbed human jukebox, all the while being paid handsomely for his detestable efforts.
He did, man, too. But then, Ryan comes to SuChong and says, SuChong want to be buried in filthy store, or SuChong want to make a good salary? Work for Ryan. How much salary? Asks SuChong. This, Ryan find very funny.
The story of Yi SuChong as we know it begins with his birth in rural Korea sometime before the events of the Second World War. While we don't have a great number of details surrounding his upbringing, or really even his life in general before he would move to the submerged city, we do know that he would be son to a house servant and that the war would create opportunity for him. Opportunity likely coming in the form of some sort of formal education, where he would get his start in the field of medical research. Unfortunately though, while the war would come with benefits, it would also come with casualties. SuChong himself recalling a time when the Japanese would storm his city, killing every man in sight, aside from himself. The researcher managing to stave off a bullet by providing the troops with opium, an offering that would save him from his fate, but would also mark him as a traitor to the Chinese government. This turn of events likely being the spark that would send SuChong deep into hiding, down to the last places these forces would ever find him, Rapture. With his impeccable intellect and flexible morality, it wouldn't be long before SuChong would find himself linking up with a businessman named Frank Fontaine. At the time, Fontaine had recently been approached by a woman named Bridget Tenenbaum, who discovered a remarkable medical substance that she would dub Adam. Around the exploration of this so-called Adam, the shady businessman would create a new company known as Fontaine Futuristics, and it would be here that SuChong would find his new home. With Fontaine's financial backing, Tenenbaum and SuChong would begin their research, but right off the bat would encounter the issue of limited test samples. The deep-sea slugs from which Adam was derived produced only very small amounts of the raw substance, an issue that Tenenbaum would rectify with the creation of Little Sisters, hollow-eyed children who had a sea slug embedded in their stomach so as to provide up to 30 times more usable Adam. And with their existence, research could truly begin in earnest. Functionally, the possibilities of Adam were limitless. The miracle substance had the ability to destroy cells within the body and replace them with new, unstable stem versions, with the potential to develop into any number of new variations, even unnatural ones. However, there was a downside. Inside a host's body, Adam would act as a sort of benign cancer, slowly expanding to destroy native tissue cells, which would affect both a host's physical and mental faculties, a person needing to use the chemical habitually to stave off these negative consequences. For SuChong, the possibilities of Adam were intoxicating, but while Tenenbaum was content to just study the substance, he was thirsty to unlock its full potential.
Tenenbaum. Sometimes I pity the little freak. Such a tiny imagination. Content to sit there with the tanks of Adam tweaking and optimizing. I need to create. Adam is a canvas of a genetic modification, but the plasmids are the paint.
With boundless genetic freedom at his fingertips, SuChong would begin to refine Adam into usable products known as plasmids, developing incredible creations such as Enrage and Telekinesis, exposing the public to a whole new addiction. Plasmids were an overnight sensation, thrusting both them and their creator into the limelight, as SuChong became revered as one of the brightest minds to grace this submerged city. But for him, he wasn't as interested in the praise as he was the money. The plasmid business had made him a wealthy man, and as he explored deeper and deeper into the potential of Adam, he would continue to find new ways to profitize the market. However, while he'd been busy making discoveries, his employer had been busy making enemies. Rapture's founder, Andrew Ryan, had heard rumors that Frank Fontaine had been smuggling contraband from the surface into his closed society. To find out the validity of these claims, an investigation would be launched, and as they began exploring Fontaine's back alley businesses, he knew his days were numbered. With Ryan and his hounds now nipping at his heels, Fontaine began to make contingencies for when they would inevitably take their bite. One of these plans would enlist the aid of both Tenenbaum and SuChong, who would be tasked with using Adam to create the ultimate sleeper agent named Jack. Taking a viable embryo from Ryan's mistress, Jasmine Jolene, the illegitimate son of the city's founder would be born, raised as the subject of constant testing and experimentation, as the scientific duo conditioned him to react to certain phrases and code words, Adam allowing them to shape the boy into Fontaine's personal human jukebox, imprinting him with false memories and sending him to the surface should he ever be needed to bail out his sponsor. SuChong and Tenenbaum would be entirely successful in these endeavors, but unfortunately for them, the celebrations would be short, as Fontaine would reportedly be gunned down in a firefight with Ryan's investigators, the death of his employer effectively making SuChong a free agent. And as it just so happened, Ryan was hiring.
Fontaine is dead. Bad for Fontaine. Good for SuChong. Play hard to get for a bit. Then Mr. Ryan get hungry for me. Tenenbaum gone, Fontaine gone. SuChong only one who know all about little sisters. Like I said, it is very good for SuChong.
With Fontaine out of the picture and Tenenbaum missing in action, SuChong would be the only one left who was truly familiar with Adam and its properties. This made him an essential asset if Ryan was to keep his city from crumbling under the weight of its new genetic addictions. As such, the pair would strike a deal for the acclaimed researcher to continue his scientific exploits under new management, a change that SuChong would welcome, as long as the money was good. However, while the death of Fontaine would work out fine for SuChong, Ryan's struggles were just beginning. With its founder dead, the fate of Fontaine Futuristics would be called into question, Ryan deciding to nationalize the company, a move that many would see as an affront to his espoused ideals of the great chain of industry. These disapproving whispers eventually becoming full-throated condemnations from a growing rebellion of malcontent in the slums of Apollo Square. Small scuffles between Ryan's men and a detractor named Atlas, leaving bodies in the streets as civil war was beginning to mount. For SuChong, these conflicts were periphery to his work, but as they continued to drag on, they would begin to affect the Adam supply chain. Not only were ordinary citizens addicted to the volatile chemical, but splicing had become a necessity of combat, the two needs in tandem creating a demand that Little Sisters just weren't capable of filling. Luckily, ever the opportunist, SuChong had developed a way to siphon off excess Adam from the bodies of the dead. His plan being to mentally condition these invulnerable little sisters to search the streets of Rapture for corpses from which to collect, but in practice, these efforts would be hindered by the addicted masses. To remedy this, he would need a protector, and for that, he would look to the Big Daddies. SuChong had been the one who'd created these monstrosities of metal some time prior, using them to fill Rapture's need for constant upkeep in such a harsh environment. Their imposing stature and powerful bodies made them the perfect overwatch for the Feeble Sisters. Yet, as he attempted to establish a protection bond between the two, he would find it to be more complicated than he realized. While this headache would plague him, another mystery would only add to the fire. Small shimmers had begun appearing around the city's sunken corridors, peering through them, seeming to give visual to an entirely new world. The prospect would fascinate the medical researcher, so he would employ observers to watch these shimmers to report anything of interest. One of these people suggesting that a young woman was responsible and seemed to be able to interact with these so-dubbed shimmers. For SuChong, this revelation would require more investigation, and as he dug into the mysteries of this phenomena, he would discover a man on the other side of the shimmer had been stealing his inventions. With no recourse to do anything about it though, he would decide to play the same game, stealing this Fink character's idea for a drinkable plasmid and presenting it as his own to an impressed Andrew Ryan. Yet, even more than that, through these shimmers, he would discover that Fink had somehow successfully created a bond between a giant mechanical bird and a young girl. The question of how, though, would infuriate him. Luckily, as it turned out, the girl who was interacting with these shimmers was the same girl who'd been imprinted. So his attention would turn to this Elizabeth, as he was determined to get a hair sample and uncover where the process had faltered. But in the end, not even this girl's genetics would provide him with the answers he needed. Frustrated and angry at his first real roadblock below the waves, SuChong would return to his clinic to talk through his thoughts. A decision that would mark the success of the protection bond, but the end of this brilliant man. Yi SuChong is one of the most accomplished and impressive men to have ever graced the corridors of this once great city. From humble beginnings, SuChong would claw his way into becoming a geneticist with no equal, his brilliance finding a home in a place where he could truly be allowed to shine beyond regulations and moral restriction. In Rapture, he would thrive, finding commonality with anyone who had the money and facilities to accommodate him. Yet, while he pushed the border of progress, he would also trample on the boundaries of the ethical, selling unstable addictive substances, mind-controlling unfortunate victims, creating monsters to suit his needs. SuChong lived a life for scientific exploration. So what more fitting of an end than to die on the only obstacle he couldn't overcome?
To allow for... Get away, you filthy little shit! What? What are you doing?